Professor had worked at Station Academy for 37 years. In all that time, he had never seen a food item that his scanner could not analyze. The machine was his pride. He had built it himself, using the most advanced technology from 12 different star systems. It could detect any chemical, any bacteria, any dangerous substance in less than 3 seconds. The scanner sat at the entrance of the main cafeteria. Every student, every teacher, every visitor had to pass their food through it before entering. This was the rule. This had always been the rule. Station Academy welcomed beings from over 200 different planets. Each species had different bodies. What was safe food for one species could be deadly poison for another. Professor his species had evolved on a cold planet with very little sunlight. His skin was pale blue, almost white. He had 4 eyes arranged in a square pattern on his face. His body was thin and tall, almost 3 meters high. He moved slowly and carefully, like a tree swaying in gentle wind. Every morning, Professor arrived at the cafeteria at exactly 6 o'clock. He would clean his scanner with a soft cloth. He would check all the sensors. He would run test scans on sample foods. Only when everything was perfect would he open the cafeteria doors. The students called him the gatekeeper behind his back. Some thought he was too strict. Some thought he was boring, but everyone respected him. In 37 years, there had never been a single food poisoning incident at the academy. Not one student had ever gotten sick from eating something dangerous. This was because of Professor and his scanner. The academy itself was a marvel of galactic engineering. It floated in space, far from any planet in a region called the neutral zone. Here, no single government had control. Here, all species were equal. The station was shaped like a giant wheel, spinning slowly to create artificial gravity. Inside, there were classrooms, laboratories, dormitories, gardens, and of course, the cafeteria. The cafeteria was the heart of the station. It was a massive circular room with a transparent ceiling that showed the stars above. Long tables stretched across the floor, designed to accommodate beings of all sizes. Some chairs were tiny, meant for species no bigger than a human hand. Others were enormous, built for creatures that weighed several tons. Food came from everywhere in the galaxy. The kitchen staff included chefs from 50 different worlds. They prepared meals that glowed, meals that moved, meals that sang soft melodies when you bit into them. There were dishes made from plants that grew in the cores of dying stars. There were drinks extracted from the tears of crystal beings who lived on frozen moons. But all of it, every single item, had to pass through Professor's scanner first. The professor took his job seriously because he understood the danger. He had seen what could happen when food safety was ignored. Early in his career, before coming to Station, he had witnessed a terrible accident. A young student had eaten a simple fruit from Earth. It was called a grape. The student died within minutes. The acid in the grape had dissolved his internal organs. After that day, dedicated his life to food safety. He studied chemistry. He studied biology. He learned about the bodies of hundreds of different species. He understood that the galaxy was full of wonders, but also full of dangers. Something as simple as salt could kill certain beings. Sugar was poison to others. Even water, plain water, was deadly to species that had evolved on planets with different liquids. The scanner was programmed with data about every known species in the Galactic Federation. When a student placed their food on the scanning platform, the machine would first identify who they were. Then it would analyze their food. Finally, it would determine if that food was safe for that specific being to eat. Green light meant safe, yellow light meant caution, red light meant danger. In 37 years, Professor had seen many red lights. He had stopped students from eating things that would have killed them. He had confiscated items that looked harmless but contained hidden poisons. He had saved lives, hundreds of lives, maybe thousands. He never asked for thanks. He never wanted praise. He simply did his job. The academy year was about to begin again. New students would arrive soon. Ships were already docking at the station's ports, bringing young beings from across the galaxy. They came to learn, to grow, to make friends with species they had never met before. Professor stood at his station, watching the empty cafeteria. The tables were clean. The floors were polished. Everything was ready. He placed his four-fingered hand on his scanner and felt the gentle hum of its power cells. Another year, he said to himself. Another chance to keep everyone safe. He did not know that this year would be different. He did not know that a ship was approaching the station at that very moment, carrying a student who would change everything. He did not know that in just a few days, his beloved scanner would face a challenge it could not handle. The ship was coming from a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy, a planet that most species considered unimportant, a planet called Earth. On that ship was a young man named. He was 18 years old. He had black hair and brown eyes. He was neither tall nor short, neither thin nor heavy. By human standards, he was completely ordinary. But was not ordinary. He was one of only 12 humans ever accepted to Station Academy. Humans were new to the galactic community. They had only made first contact with alien life 50 years ago. Most species still did not know much about them. Stood at the window of his small cabin, watching the station grow larger as the ship approached. His heart was beating fast. He was nervous and excited at the same time. This was his dream. He had studied hard for years to earn this chance. In his luggage, carefully packed, was a gift from his mother. It was food, Korean food. The kind of food he had eaten his whole life. The kind of food that reminded him of home. He did not know that this food would soon make him famous. He did not know that it would melt a scanner that had worked perfectly for 37 years. He did not know that his mother's cooking would terrify an entire space station. All he knew was that he was hungry, and he could not wait to eat. Professor's scanner hummed quietly in the empty cafeteria, waiting for the new students to arrive. It had no idea what was coming. The ship docked at Port 7 on a Tuesday morning, collected his bags and walked down the long corridor that connected the ship to the station. His legs felt strange. The gravity here was slightly different from Earth, and his body needed time to adjust. Around him, other new students were also arriving. He saw creatures of all shapes and sizes. There was a being made entirely of floating crystals that chimed softly as it moved. There was a family of small furry animals, each no bigger than a cat, chattering in a language of clicks and whistles. There was a giant slug-like creature that left a trail of shimmering slime on the floor. Tried not to stare. He had studied alien species in school, but seeing them in person was different. Everything felt unreal, like he was walking through a dream. A robot guide met him at the end of the corridor. It was a simple machine, shaped like a floating ball with a screen for a face. The screen displayed a friendly smile. "Welcome to Station Academy," the robot said in perfect Korean. "You must be. I am Guide Unit 7. I will show you to your dormitory." Followed the robot through wide hallways filled with activity. Students rushed past him, some walking, some floating, some crawling on multiple legs. Signs on the walls were written in dozens of languages, some using letters, some using symbols, some using colors that humans could not even see. His dormitory was in Section 12, an area designated for oxygen-breathing species. His room was small but comfortable. There was a bed, a desk, a closet, and a window that looked out at the stars. The robot explained how to use the communication panel, how to order supplies, and how to find his classes. "The cafeteria opens at 7 in the morning," the robot said. "All food must be scanned before consumption. This is mandatory for all students." Nodded. He had read about this rule in the acceptance documents. He understood why it existed. Different species had different needs. After the robot left, unpacked his bags. He hung his clothes in the closet. He arranged his books on the desk. And then, carefully, he opened the special insulated container that his mother had packed for him. His mother's name was. She was a small woman with kind eyes and strong hands. She had worked in a restaurant kitchen for 20 years before opening her own small food shop in Seoul. Cooking was her life. Food was her language of love. When told her he was going to study in space, had cried, not because she was sad but because she was proud. Her son, her only child, was going to learn among the stars. It was more than she had ever dreamed. But she worried. She worried that he would be lonely. She worried that he would miss home. Most of all, she worried that he would not eat properly. Alien food, she thought. Who knew what strange things they ate out there in space? So she had packed him food, lots of food, enough food to last for weeks. Looked at the containers inside the insulated bag. There was kimchi, the fermented cabbage that Koreans had been eating for centuries. It was spicy and sour and full of beneficial bacteria. Made her kimchi the traditional way, burying it in the ground during winter to ferment slowly. There was gochujang, the red pepper paste that gave Korean food its famous heat. Gochujang was special. She added extra peppers, making it twice as spicy as normal. Loved it. His mouth would burn, his eyes would water, but he could not stop eating. There was also the fermented soybean paste. It smelled strong, almost overwhelming, but the taste was deep and complex. Used it in soups and stews and sauces. She said that good needed at least 3 years to develop its full flavor. Finally, there was a container of kimchi, a stew made with kimchi, pork, tofu, and vegetables. Had prepared it just before left. All he needed to do was heat it up. Smiled as he looked at the food. He could almost see his mother in the kitchen, chopping vegetables, stirring pots, tasting and adjusting flavors. She had put so much love into these containers. Each one was a piece of home. He closed the insulated bag and stored it in the small refrigeration unit in his room. Tomorrow, he decided. Tomorrow he would eat his first meal in space, and it would be his mother's cooking. That night could not sleep. He lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had happened. He was really here. He was really going to study at the most prestigious academy in the galaxy. It seemed impossible. He thought about his father, who had died when was young. His father had been a dreamer. He had loved science fiction stories about humans traveling to other planets. He had always told that one day humanity would join the galactic community. When that day comes, his father used to say, I hope a Korean is one of the first to go. Now was one of the first. He wished his father could see him. Morning came slowly. The station's artificial lights gradually brightened to simulate sunrise. Got up, washed his face, and put on his new academy uniform. It was a simple gray suit that adjusted automatically to fit his body. He opened the refrigeration unit and took out the container of kimchi. His mother had included heating instructions. He placed the container in the room's heating unit and waited. The smell filled the room within seconds. Rich, spicy, fermented. It was the smell of home. Breathed deeply and felt tears forming in his eyes. He was so far from Earth, so far from everything he knew, but this smell made him feel like his mother was right there with him. He packed the heated stew into his lunch bag, along with a container of rice and some extra kimchi. The gochujang went in too, because liked his food extra spicy. He also packed some pickled radish, yellow and crunchy and sweet. With his lunch bag in hand, left his room and headed for the cafeteria. He was excited. He was hungry. He had no idea that his simple Korean lunch was about to cause the biggest incident in the history of Station Academy. The cafeteria was already busy when he arrived. Students of all species were lined up at the entrance, waiting to have their food scanned. Joined the line and looked around with curiosity. Near the front of the line, he could see the scanning station. A tall, pale blue alien operated the machine. The alien moved with slow, careful precision, examining each food item before allowing it to pass. watched as a small bird-like creature presented a bowl of something that looked like glowing worms. Green light. Safe. A large rock-like being showed a plate of what appeared to be actual rocks. Green light. Safe. A group of tentacled creatures had brought some kind of liquid that bubbled and hissed. Yellow light, but still allowed. The line moved forward. His turn was approaching. He looked down at his lunch bag and felt a sudden nervousness. Would Korean food be allowed? Would the scanner understand it? He had never thought about this before. To him, kimchi and rice were the most normal things in the world. But to aliens who had never seen Earth food before, what would they think? The line moved again, only 3 more students ahead of him. Professor looked up and saw the young human approaching. He had scanned humans before, of course. There were a few human teachers at the academy, and occasionally human visitors came to the station. Their food was usually simple: bread, vegetables, meat, nothing unusual. The professor had no reason to expect anything different from this young human student. He had no reason to prepare himself for what was about to happen. Reached the front of the line. He placed his lunch bag on the scanning platform. Professor looked at him with all 4 eyes and gave a small nod. "Human," the professor said, nodding species in the system. "Please open your containers so the scanner can analyze the contents." Opened his lunch bag. He took out the containers one by one: rice, kimchi, pickled radish, gochujang, and finally the kimchi. The smell hit Professor immediately. His 4 eyes widened. His thin body swayed backward. In 37 years of food scanning, he had never smelled anything like this. "What," he said slowly, "is that?" Smiled politely. "Lunch," he said. "My mother made it." The professor stared at the containers. The red color of the kimchi, the darker red of the gochujang, the bubbling surface of the stew, it looked dangerous. It smelled dangerous. But looks and smells did not matter. Only the scan mattered. Professor activated his machine. The scanner began its analysis. And that was when everything went wrong. The scanner hummed as it began its work. Blue light swept across the containers, analyzing every molecule, every compound, every tiny particle. Professor watched the display screen, waiting for the results. The first item was rice. The scanner processed it quickly. Simple carbohydrates, water, some proteins, green light, safe. The second item was the pickled radish. The scanner paused for a moment. It detected vinegar, sugar, and some coloring agents. There was a brief yellow flash as it processed the acidity levels. Then green light, safe for human consumption. The third item was the kimchi. The scanner began its analysis, and immediately something strange happened. The display screen flickered. Numbers appeared, disappeared, and appeared again. The machine made a sound that Professor had never heard before. It was like a cough, like the machine was choking on the data. "What is this?" the professor muttered, leaning closer to the screen. The scanner was detecting fermentation bacteria. This was normal. Many species ate fermented foods, but the types of bacteria in this kimchi were unusual. Lactobacillus. The machine recognized them but seemed confused by their concentration. There were billions of bacteria in this single container. Living, active bacteria. The screen flashed yellow. Caution, high bacterial content detected. But the scanner was not finished. It was also detecting something else: capsaicin. This was the chemical that made peppers hot. The scanner had encountered capsaicin before in very small amounts. Some species used it as a medicine. Others used it as a weapon. The capsaicin levels in this kimchi were off the charts. The display screen turned orange. This was not a standard color. Professor had never seen orange before. The machine was creating a new warning level because its normal categories were not sufficient. Warning: extreme irritant detected. Capsaicin concentration exceeds safe parameters by factor of 47. Professor's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. Factor of 47. That was impossible. That was not food, that was poison, that was a chemical weapon. But the scanner was already moving to the next item, the gochujang. The moment the blue light touched the red paste, the scanner screamed. There was no other word for it. The machine made a high-pitched sound that echoed through the entire cafeteria. Students stopped eating. Conversations died. Everyone turned to look at the scanning station. The display screen was now flashing red. But not just red. Red and orange in colors that Professor could not even name. The machine was detecting capsaicin levels that should not exist in any food product anywhere in the known galaxy. Warning, lethal toxin detected. Warning, biological hazard. Warning, possible weapon classification. The scanner's cooling fans kicked into high gear. The machine was overheating. It was trying to process information that did not make sense. How could any species eat this? How could any living being consume something with this level of chemical irritants? Professor reached for the emergency shutdown button, but he was too slow. The scanner moved to the final container, the kimchi. This was the worst. This was so much worse. The stew contained everything. Fermented cabbage with its billions of bacteria, red pepper paste with its extreme capsaicin, but it also contained garlic, lots of garlic. The scanner detected allicin, a compound that was mildly toxic to dozens of species. It detected high levels of sodium from the soup base. It detected fats from the pork that were difficult for many species to process. And it detected something else, something the scanner had never encountered before. The fermented soybean paste. The scanner tried to analyze it. It tried very hard, but was complex. It contained hundreds of different compounds created by years of fermentation. There were proteins that had been broken down into amino acids. There were enzymes that were still active. There were fungi and bacteria working together in ways that the scanner could not understand. The machine's processor began to overheat. Error, unknown compound detected. Error, analysis incomplete. Error, possible contamination. The display screen was now showing warnings in languages that Professor did not recognize. The machine was pulling from its emergency databases, searching for any information that could explain what it was seeing. It found nothing. Smoke began to rise from the scanner. "Everyone step back," Professor shouted. His voice was high with panic. In 37 years, his scanner had never failed. In 37 years, nothing had ever broken it. Stepped backward, his eyes wide. He did not understand what was happening. It was just lunch. It was just his mother's cooking. Why was the machine making such terrible sounds? The scanner's display screen cracked. Sparks flew from the side panels. The smell of burning electronics filled the air, mixing strangely with the smell of kimchi and gochujang. The machine was dying. In its final moments, the scanner made one last attempt to classify the food. It pulled together all the data it had collected: extreme capsaicin levels, billions of bacteria, unknown fermented compounds, high sodium, strong acids, active enzymes. The scanner reached a conclusion. It was the only conclusion that made sense based on the data. Classification: biological weapon, Class 7 hazard, immediate containment required. And then the scanner exploded. It was not a big explosion. There was no fire, no shrapnel, no danger to anyone standing nearby. But the machine that had worked perfectly for 37 years simply stopped working. Smoke poured from every opening. The display screen went dark. The scanning light died. The humming stopped. Professor stood in shock. His mouth was open. His 4 eyes were unblinking. He could not process what had just happened. "My scanner," he whispered. "My beautiful scanner." Around him, the cafeteria was silent. Hundreds of students stared at the scene. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Looked at the destroyed machine, then at his lunch containers, then at Professor. He felt terrible. He had not meant to break anything. He had just wanted to eat his mother's food. "I am sorry," he said quietly. "I did not know this would happen." Professor slowly turned to look at the young human. His expression was one of complete disbelief. "What was that?" the professor asked. "What did you bring into my cafeteria?" "Lunch," said again. "It is Korean food from Earth." "Korean food," the professor repeated. The word sounded strange coming from his alien mouth. "From Earth." "Yes, my mother made it." Professor looked at the smoking remains of his scanner. He looked at the innocent-looking containers on the platform. He looked at the young human who seemed genuinely confused about what had happened. "Your mother," the professor said slowly, "made something that my scanner classified as a Class 7 biological weapon." Blinked, "A weapon? No, it is food. It is very normal food. All Koreans eat this." The professor's legs felt weak. He needed to sit down, but there was no chair nearby. His scanner, his life's work, was destroyed. And this human was telling him that this was normal, that millions of humans ate this every day. "Is it safe?" Professor asked. "Is it safe for you to eat?" Nodded. "Yes, of course. It is very healthy. The bacteria in kimchi are good for digestion. The peppers help with blood circulation. My mother says this food makes you strong." The professor did not know what to say. He had spent his entire career protecting students from dangerous food. He had stopped countless incidents. He had saved lives. But he had never encountered a species that willingly ate biological weapons for lunch. The cafeteria was still silent. Students from dozens of worlds watched this exchange with fascination and fear. They had all seen the warnings on the scanner. They had all seen the machine classify this food as a Class 7 hazard. And now this human was going to eat it. "I am hungry," said. "Can I please have my food back?" Professor did not know what to do. His scanner was broken. He had no way to verify if this food was truly safe for humans. But the human seemed confident. The human did not seem worried at all. Security officers were pushing through the crowd now. Someone had called them when the scanner exploded. They were tall beings with hard shells and multiple arms, trained to handle any emergency. "What is the situation?" the lead officer demanded. Professor pointed a shaking finger at lunch containers. "This human," he said, "brought food that destroyed my scanner and was classified as a biological weapon." The security officers looked at. They looked at the containers. They looked at the smoking scanner. "Human," the lead officer said, "you will need to come with us for questioning." His heart sank. This was not how he had imagined his first day at the academy. He had not even eaten breakfast yet, and already he was being taken away by security. As the officers led him out of the cafeteria, looked back at his lunch containers, still sitting on the broken scanner. His mother's cooking, the food she had made with love, the food that reminded him of home. Now it was evidence in what might be the strangest security incident in the history of Station Academy. And still had not eaten lunch. The security office was cold. Sat in a chair designed for beings twice his size, his feet dangling above the floor. Across from him sat 3 security officers and a translator unit. His lunch containers were in a sealed box on the table, treated like dangerous evidence. "Let us begin from the beginning," said the lead officer. His name was. He had a hard shell covered in small spikes and 6 eyes arranged in 2 rows. "You claim this substance is food." "It is food," said. "It is what I eat every day." "Every day," repeated. He turned to the other officers. They exchanged looks that could not read. "You eat this every day." "Yes, many humans do. It is very common in my country." Pressed a button on the table. A holographic display appeared, showing the scanner's final readings before it died. The scanner detected capsaicin levels that exceed safe parameters by a factor of 47. "Do you understand what that means?" Shook his head. "It means that the concentration of irritant chemicals in your food is 47 times higher than the maximum amount considered safe for consumption by any known species in our database. But humans eat spicy food all the time, said. Some people eat food much spicier than this. The officers stared at him. Spicier, one of them said, than this. Yes, my mother's cooking is actually not that spicy by Korean standards. Some restaurants serve food that would make this seem mild. There was a long silence, turned off the holographic display. The scanner also detected what it classified as a biological hazard, he continued. Billions of bacteria, living bacteria, in your food. That is the fermentation, explained. Kimchi is fermented. The bacteria are good for your stomach. They help with digestion. Good bacteria, said slowly. Yes, humans have been eating fermented foods for thousands of years. It is a traditional way of preserving vegetables. Another silence. The officers seemed to be struggling with this information. Everything was saying went against their understanding of food safety. We have contacted the human embassy, said finally. A representative is on the way to verify your claims. Until then, you will remain here. Nodded, he understood. This was all a misunderstanding. Once someone explained Korean food to them, everything would be fine. He just hoped they would let him eat soon. His stomach was growling. An hour passed. Then, too, was given water but no food. He sat in the oversized chair, thinking about his mother. She would laugh if she knew her cooking had caused this much trouble, or maybe she would be proud. Her kimchi was powerful enough to destroy advanced alien technology. Finally, the door opened. A human woman walked in. She was tall, with short gray hair and a serious expression. She wore a formal suit with the symbol of the human embassy on her shoulder. I am ambassador, she said in Korean. I understand you have caused quite a situation. Stood and bowed. I did not mean to cause problems. I only wanted to eat lunch. Ambassador looked at the sealed box on the table. Is that the famous lunch? Yes, my mother packed it for me. The ambassador turned too. Officer, I would like to examine the contents of this box. Hesitated. Ambassador, the scanner classified these items as a Class 7 biological hazard. I cannot recommend. I am aware of the classification, Ambassador interrupted. I am also aware that what is in that box is standard Korean cuisine that billions of humans eat every day. I would like to demonstrate this. She opened the sealed box and took out the containers. She opened each one, smelling the contents. A small smile appeared on her face. This is excellent kimchi, she said. Your mother is a good cook. Thank you, said. Ambassador turned to the security officers. Watch carefully, she said. I am going to eat this biological weapon. She picked up a piece of kimchi with her fingers and put it in her mouth. She chewed. She swallowed. The officers watched in horror. Delicious, she said. Very well fermented, perfect sourness. She took a spoonful of the kimchi. She ate it. She took another spoonful. She ate that too. The soup is a bit cold now, she said too. It would be better heated. I know, said sadly. It has been sitting here for hours. Leaned forward. Ambassador, you just consumed substances that our scanner classified as extremely dangerous. How are you not dead? Ambassador wiped her mouth with a napkin. Officer, I grew up eating this food. My grandmother made kimchi that was much spicier than this. Compared to her cooking, this is practically mild. But the capsaicin levels. Humans have evolved to tolerate capsaicin, the ambassador explained. Our bodies do not react to it the way other species do. To us, it simply creates a pleasant burning sensation that we enjoy. You enjoy burning, said flatly. Yes, many humans find spicy food pleasurable. Some of us actively seek out the spiciest foods we can find. There are competitions. People eat peppers so hot that they need medical attention afterward, and they do this for fun. The officers looked at each other. One of them made a gesture that recognized as disbelief. The bacteria, another officer said. The fermentation, is that also not dangerous? Not to humans, Ambassador said. In fact, it is beneficial. Fermented foods support our digestive systems. They contain vitamins and nutrients that help keep us healthy. Humans have been eating fermented foods for longer than we have had written language. She closed the containers and pushed them toward. This young man has done nothing wrong, she said. He brought a normal lunch from his home planet. The fact that your scanner could not handle it is not his fault. It is a limitation of your technology. Was quiet for a long moment, then he spoke. Ambassador, I must admit that I do not understand humans. Your species eats things that would kill almost any other being in the galaxy. You consume irritants for pleasure. You cultivate bacteria in your food deliberately. Your dietary habits are completely unlike anything in our database. That is because humans are strange, Ambassador said. We evolved on a harsh planet. We had to eat whatever we could find to survive. We developed ways to preserve food that other species never needed. We learned to enjoy things that would be dangerous to others. She stood up. Officer, I recommend that you release this student immediately. I also recommend that you update your scanner's database to include human dietary information. We have more humans coming to this station. You will need to be prepared. Nodded slowly. We will do this, but Ambassador, I have one more question. Yes. This food that destroyed our scanner. You said it was not very spicy by Korean standards. You said some humans eat food that is much more extreme. That is correct. What would happen if someone brought that kind of food here? The really spicy food, the really fermented food. Ambassador smiled. Officer, I suggest you build a stronger scanner. She turned to, come, let us get you out of here. And for the record, your mother's cooking smells wonderful. When you talk to her next, tell her that Ambassador from the Human Embassy sends her compliments. Gathered his lunch containers. As he followed the ambassador out of the security office, he looked back at the officers one more time. They were still sitting in stunned silence, trying to understand how a simple lunch from Earth had caused so much chaos. He thought about his mother in Seoul, probably cooking dinner right now, not knowing that her food had been classified as a weapon of mass destruction by an alien security force. He could not wait to tell her the story. But first he was going to eat his lunch, finally. News traveled fast on station. By dinner time, everyone knew about the human whose lunch had destroyed the food scanner. By the next morning was famous. Students pointed at him in the hallways. Some whispered, some stared. A few brave ones approached him with questions. Is it true your food was classified as a weapon? Asked a small creature with wings and too many teeth. Yes, said, but it was just kimchi. What is kimchi? Fermented cabbage with spices. The creature looked horrified. You ferment your vegetables on purpose. Yes, it makes them taste better and last longer. Word spread further, became known as the human who ate poison for lunch. Other students avoided sitting near him in the cafeteria, afraid that his food might somehow affect them. A few professors asked him questions about human dietary habits, taking notes with fascinated expressions. Professor was given a new scanner, the most advanced model available. Before installing it, he spent 3 days programming it with human food data. He studied kimchi. He studied gochujang. He studied every fermented, spiced, and strange food that humans consumed. What he learned terrified him. Humans ate mold on purpose. They called it cheese. They ate raw fish. They drank beverages that killed bacteria called alcohol, and they did this for social reasons. They consumed caffeine, a compound that was toxic to many species, every morning to help them wake up. Their entire diet was a catalog of things that would harm or kill most other beings in the galaxy. Professor began to look at humans differently. These creatures were not weak or ordinary. They were survivors of a dangerous world who had adapted to eat things that nothing else could eat. 3 weeks after the incident, received a message from his mother. She had seen news reports about what happened. Human media had picked up the story. Korean students' lunch destroys alien technology was a popular headline. His video message played on his personal screen. "My son," she said, her face filling the display. "I heard what happened. I am sorry if my cooking caused problems for you, but I am also a little proud. My kimchi is powerful enough to break space technology." She laughed. It was a warm sound that made Miss Home terribly. "I am sending you more food," continued. "This time I made extra gochujang. Tell those aliens that this is how Koreans have eaten for thousands of years. Our ancestors survived wars and famine and disease by eating this food. If their machines cannot handle it, that is their problem, not ours." She smiled. "Eat well, my son, be strong, make Korea proud." The message ended. Sat in his room, looking at the blank screen, thinking about his mother's words. A few days later, a package arrived. Inside was everything had promised and more. There was fresh kimchi, newly made and still actively fermenting. There was extra spicy gochujang. There was dried seaweed and pickled garlic and bottles of fish sauce. Brought it all to the cafeteria the next day. Professor was ready. His new scanner had been programmed to handle human food. When placed his containers on the platform, the machine analyzed them without any problems. There were warning messages, of course. There were always warnings for human food, but the scanner did not explode. It did not catch fire. It simply reported the contents and allowed to pass. Green light, safe for human consumption. "Thank you," said to the professor. Professor looked at him with his 4 eyes. "I have learned much about your species in the past weeks," he said. "I find humans fascinating and terrifying." "We are just people," said. "We eat what we have always eaten." "That is what makes you terrifying," the professor said. "You do not realize how exceptional you are." Took his lunch to a table and began to eat. The kimchi was perfect. The rice was warm. The gochujang added just the right amount of heat. He closed his eyes and imagined he was back in Seoul, sitting in his mother's kitchen, listening to her talk about her day. A shadow fell across his table. Opened his eyes to see 3 alien students standing nearby. He recognized them. They were in his biology class. One was a tall being covered in silver scales. One was a small floating sphere of light. One was a creature that looked like a walking plant. "Can we sit here?" the scaled one asked. Was surprised. No one had wanted to sit near him since the incident. "Yes, of course." The 3 aliens sat down. They placed their own lunches on the table. The scaled one had something that looked like blue crystals. The floating sphere absorbed some kind of energy from a special container. The plant creature had a pot of what appeared to be soil and water. "We wanted to ask you something," the scaled one said, "about your food." "What do you want to know?" "Is it true that it burned the professor's scanner?" "The scanner exploded," confirmed. "But my food is not dangerous, not to humans." "We know," the floating sphere said. Its voice came from somewhere inside the light. "We read about human food in the database. You eat things that would kill us." "That is what Professor said too." "We think that is amazing," the plant creature said. Its voice was like wind through leaves. "Your species is so strong. You can survive things that no other species can survive." Had never thought about it that way. To him, eating kimchi was normal. Eating spicy food was normal. He had never considered that these simple things made him seem powerful to others. "Can we try some?" the scaled one asked, pointing to his lunch. Was shocked. "Are you sure it might hurt you?" "We know, but we want to understand, just a small taste." Thought about it, he did not want to harm anyone, but these students were asking willingly. They knew the risks. "Only a very small taste," he said, "and only the rice. The rice is the safest." He gave each of them a single grain of rice. They examined it carefully. Then, one by one, they ate it. The scaled one's face changed color. The floating sphere flickered rapidly. The plant creature's leaves curled inward. "Interesting," the scaled one said. "It has no taste that I can detect, but it creates a strange sensation in my digestion chamber." "My energy patterns are fluctuating," the floating sphere reported. "This grain is causing unusual reactions." "I feel strange," the plant creature said, "but not unpleasant, just different." They all looked at its lunch with new respect. "One grain of rice did that," the scaled one said. "I cannot imagine what the red food would do." "The red food would probably send you to the medical center," said honestly. "Humans have had years to build tolerance. You cannot handle it the same way." The aliens nodded. They understood, but something had changed. They no longer looked at with fear or suspicion. They looked at him with something like admiration. "Tell us more about human food," the floating sphere said. "We want to learn." Smiled. For the first time since arriving at the station, he felt like he belonged. He spent the rest of lunch telling his new friends about Korean cuisine. He explained fermentation. He described the history of kimchi. He talked about his mother and her restaurant and the way she put love into every dish she made. The aliens listened with fascination. They asked questions. They took notes. And when lunch was over, they made plans to eat together again the next day. Walked back to his room feeling happy. His mother's cooking had caused chaos. It had destroyed a scanner. It had led to a security investigation. But it had also done something unexpected. It had made him friends. That night, he sent a message back to his mother. "Mom," he said, "your kimchi is famous now. Everyone on the station knows about it. Some of them think I am scary because I eat it, but some of them want to learn more. I think Korean food is going to become very popular in space." He paused, thinking about what else to say. "Thank you for the food. Thank you for everything. I miss you. But I am okay. I am more than okay. I think I am going to be happy here." He ended the message and sent it across the stars, all the way back to Earth, all the way back to a small kitchen in Seoul where a mother was probably already cooking something new. Something powerful, something strange, something that would probably terrify aliens across the galaxy. Something made with love. In the cafeteria, Professor's new scanner hummed quietly, waiting for tomorrow. It was programmed now. It was prepared. It knew about humans and their impossible food. But somewhere, Professor knew, there was something even more extreme. Something that would make this kimchi seem mild. Something that humans somewhere on Earth were eating right now, probably enjoying, probably asking for more. He added a note to the scanner's programming. "Human food, expect the unexpected." It was the best advice he could give.